All right, let's jump right into a topic that's affecting millions of students as we speak, tutoring. We're going to break down why it's suddenly the biggest conversation in education, what really makes it work, and maybe most importantly, how schools can figure out how to get the most bang for their buck.
So first things first, let's talk about the problem. And, it's a huge one. The pandemic basically threw education into a state of emergency, and it created these massive learning challenges that, honestly, schools are now just racing to try and solve.
And I'm not exaggerating here. The latest data from the Nation's Report Card, that big nationwide checkup on how students are doing, it shows that the pandemic pretty much wiped out 20 years of progress in math and reading. I mean, think about that, 20 years. It's just a staggering setback.
But here's the thing. In the middle of this crisis, there's one solution that pretty much every researcher and educator agrees on. When you look at all the studies, tutoring consistently delivers some of the biggest learning gains. It's really the closest thing we have to a silver bullet.
Okay, but not just any kind of help is going to cut it. The evidence is super clear on this. To get those really impressive results, you need a very specific formula, and that's what the experts call high-impact tutoring.
So the key thing to get here is that we're not talking about some casual homework help after school. This is a really structured, intense, professional intervention. It has to be frequent, it's got to be personal, in tiny groups, and it has to connect directly to what kids are actually learning in the classroom.
And this table just lays it out so perfectly. It shows you exactly why those details matter so much. I mean, look at the columns. Study after study shows programs work better when they're led by teachers, not volunteers, when the dosage is high, we're talking 3 or more times a week, and when the group size is really, really small. These aren't just, nice ideas. They are the absolute core of what makes tutoring work. So, okay, we had the formula. We know what works. But believe it or not, that's really just the beginning. Because knowing the formula leads to a totally new, really complex problem for schools that are out there trying to pick a program. The reality is, there are hundreds of different tutoring providers out there, and they all use different tutors, different schedules, different materials, so as you can probably guess, their results are just all over the map. Some are fantastic, and some, frankly, don't make any difference at all. So that leads to the million-dollar question for any school principal with a tight budget, right? With all these options, how in the world do you pick the right one? How do you compare them, apples to apples, to make sure you're getting the best possible value?
Well, to answer that, some recent research has given us 2 powerful new ways to measure these programs. And these tools help us get past just asking, does it work, to asking the much more important questions, which are, how well does it work, and for how much?
The first tool is called tutoring efficiency, and you can kind of think of this like a miles per gallon rating for a car. It tells you exactly how many hours of tutoring it takes to get 1 month of extra learning. So obviously, a lower number is better. It means the program is more efficient. And check this out. When researchers started using this metric, they found this really interesting pattern you see in these charts. On average, it takes less than 14 hours of math tutoring to get a month's worth of learning. But for reading and literacy, it takes almost 40 hours. That's nearly 3 times as long. It seems like targeted math skills are just a lot easier to accelerate than something as complex as reading. But, of course, how fast a program works is only half the picture. A program could be super efficient, but if it costs a fortune, you can't help very many kids with it. And that brings us to the second, really crucial metric.
And this one is called cost effectiveness. It's so smart. It basically combines how efficient a program is with its price tag to figure out the true return on investment. It answers the simple bottom-line question, for every $1,000 we spend per student, how much learning are we actually buying? Now this table shows you just how vital this is. Look at Program A and Program D. They have the exact same efficiency. Both take 8 hours to get a month of learning. But look at the cost. Program D is so much cheaper. And the result? For every $1,000 you spend, Program D delivers over 13 months of learning, while Program A gets you just over 1. That is a tenfold difference in value.
So let's just recap for a second. We're in a massive learning crisis. We have a proven solution, high-impact tutoring. And we even have new tools to find the best, most cost-effective programs. All of that makes the reality of what's happening on the ground even more shocking.
To fight this learning crisis, the federal government sent an unprecedented amount of money to schools. We're talking billions, with a B. A huge chunk of that money was specifically for academic recovery, with a big emphasis on getting tutoring programs up and running all over the country.
But despite the desperate need, and despite all that available cash, the follow-through has been, well, abysmal. A recent national survey found that less than 2% of students are actually getting the kind of high-quality tutoring that we know works.
So how do we fix this? How do we close this enormous gap? Well, researchers have laid out a pretty clear roadmap. To make smarter investments, we just need better data. We need to know more about what works for older kids and for multilingual learners. We need bigger studies. And crucially, we have to standardize how programs report their costs so that every single school can make the kind of smart, cost-effective comparisons we just walked through.
And that leaves us with what is probably the single most important question for this generation of students. We know tutoring works, the money is there, we even have the tools to pick the best programs. So the real question is, how do we make it work for everyone? That's a challenge we just can't afford to fail.